President Trump just raised the likelihood of another stimulus package for American families, or what he calls tariff rebates. Let's jump in and talk about what President Trump has said and what it might mean for you and I. Okay, this is from a CNBC article titled "Trump Floats Tariff Rebates for Consumers. That Could Be a Challenge, Experts Say." Okay, President Trump said the administration is considering a rebate for some Americans from the influx of tariff revenues. Now, this is in response to a reporter question about the possibility of tariff rebates. And here was President Donald Trump's reply. "We are thinking about that. We have so much money coming in. We're thinking about a little rebate." Okay, and this is driven in part by a over 300% increase in the tariff revenues coming in. The CNBC article says U.S. customs duties totaled roughly $27 billion for the month of June, which was over 3x from the previous year. And then they talked to some experts. This is a gentleman from the Tax Foundation, Alex Durante. And Alex says it's kind of unlikely that they would go ahead and do that. Alex continues, "I don't think a rebate would be particularly good policy. I would prefer that the revenue is used for deficit reduction rather than cutting checks to people." So that's the landscape. And as a reminder, from the last stimulus checks, and this is also from the CNBC article, these are the last stimulus checks that went out. So we had the CARES Act in March 27 of 2020. You can see what the check amounts were for and what the phase-out threshold was from an income standpoint. So for the CARES Act, it was actually for all three of these, it was $75,000 for an individual, $150,000 for married filing jointly. And that includes the most recent one of March 11th, 2021. So are we going to get stimulus checks? I don't know. None of us know. I think it would be unlikely because the big, beautiful act that was recently passed, that is going to potentially increase the deficit. Now, what the Trump administration is hoping is that the growth that will be stimulated by that package will increase tax revenue and will make up for it. Now, I will say that, that is the siren song of politics, that, we can give ourselves a tax cut and it's going to create so much growth that it's going to pay for itself. And I wish that was true. There certainly have been times in the past where that has been true, but it takes special situations. I'm not an economist. I'm not an expert on this. I will share from the usdebtclock.org. This is a really good site for all of us. What is the U.S. national debt? It's approaching $38 trillion, and that is almost $110,000 now. It's $108,000 per man, woman, and child citizen of the United States. And if you assume just 4% interest on that, give me easy math, let's call it 5%, that's $5,000 per man, woman, and child. And so for a family of four, that's $20,000 a year just for the interest on that debt. And the median household income in the United States right now is right at $75,000. Let's call it $80,000. So the median family is making $80,000 a year with both people working. And the interest only on the debt for those four people is $20,000. That's 25%, of our gross pay. And that's before taxes get taken out. So that's a really, really it's a big challenge. Now, we're fortunate that the U.S. is the world's currency, and there's multiple theories that say it's less of a challenge for the country that prints the world's currency, the world's trade currency, I should say. So who knows? But I want to go through a couple other things. If you look at the bottom of this chart by U.S. debt clock, you can see here that in 1960, the debt to GDP ratio was a little over 50%. Then in 1980, it dropped to 35%. And, I graduated high school right around then. And I remember the presidential debates about how important it was to drive down the debt. And in hindsight, 35% in 1980 looks wonderful. You know, it went back up to a little over 50% in 2000. And where we're sitting now is at almost 125%. Now, there's times where a country has to go into debt. For instance, after World War II, we were at these levels as well. And having fairly recently come out of COVID, where we talked earlier about those stimulus checks that were sent out to keep the economy going, this is when the government steps in to help stabilize things so we don't get a great recession. And I know that the government's response to COVID from a stimulus standpoint, not from a medical and a health standpoint, but even the fiscal response is very controversial. There's people that love what the government did. There's people that hate what the government did. And it certainly wasn't perfect, but I'm grateful personally that we avoided a recession. I'm grateful that many of us that might have lost our jobs did not lose our jobs. So what does all this tell us? Is a stimulus check coming? Again, I don't know, but I do know it's important for all of us to plan and to save as much as we can. And if you're not saving as much as you would like, let me share with you, having been a financial advisor for over 20 years, now retired myself, one of the things I used to tell my clients that were younger that help them save more. None of this is financial advice. I don't know your situation, but I want to put an idea on your radar screen for you to explore more yourself. And that is what I used to call my 50-30-20 rule. And that is, if you can if you break out your spending and into two categories, your wants and your needs. And let's start with your needs first. Things like your mortgage, your car payment, fuel, groceries. If you can keep those needs, the things we absolutely need to pay, to 50% of your after-tax paycheck, and this is before any savings. So you've got your gross pay, then the taxes that get withheld. So 50% of that for your needs. Then budget another 30% for wants, the things that make life more enjoyable, things like going out to eat, things like taking the nicer vacation, things like the cardboard boxes that show up in our house. If we can keep our needs at 50%, our wants to 30%, that will leave us 20% left over to save. I know that's aspirational. I know many of us were raised saying if we save 10%, we'll be fine. Unfortunately, that rule may have worked for our parents, but I don't think it works for us. It's also super important to plan. The gold standard to come up with a financial plan, to come up with a retirement plan, is to work with a fiduciary financial advisor. If you'd prefer to do it yourself, I urge you, don't use Google Sheets, don't use Excel. It's too easy to make a mistake. And frankly, there's professional software that's designed for people like you and I to come up with a great financial plan. The software that I like is called Bolden. You can find it at this QR code or in the link below. I am an affiliate of the station of Bolden, so you'll be supporting this channel. And the YouTube algorithm says this is the next video of mine that you should watch next.